Today on our 2016 Fleetwood Bounder, we're going to take a look at and show you how to install the Roadmaster Rear Anti-Sway Bar, part number RM-1139-149. Now our Roadmaster Anti-Sway Bar is the perfect solution for those drivability issues we experience with our RVs. This creates a connection point from the frame, across our axle, back up to our frame. It's going to work in unison side to side. So as we experience the body roll or the top of our RV tipping one way or another, as it goes to tip one way, that frame's going to come down. It forces down on our end link, which is going to force down on our sway bar. That in turn is going to pull down on that opposite side. It helps to keep everything nice and level. Now typically body roll is going to come from cornering. It can also come from uneven pavement, crosswinds, passing 18-wheelers, or even sometimes blowouts, not as much there though. But having this in place is going to be in addition to the already existing sway bar. You can see we've got one here. Now this one's 1.5 inches in diameter and it's made of 1020, just kind of a standard steel. The Roadmaster sway bars are a significant upgrade, not only in size, we go from 1.5 inches to 1 5/8 inches, but also in material. This is a 4140 Chromoly. It makes it stiffer and much more durable than your standard steel. This is going to have a much greater effect on the handling characteristics of your coach. We also have polyurethane bushings on the end link, on our sway bar, and on our sway bar saddles. Now polyurethane bushings are much more durable than what your standard rubber bushings are. These stand up to the elements very well. They don't get brittle, they don't get dry, they don't crack, and they don't get that oblong shape that we're used to out of most of the rubber bushing material. Now the entire sway bar kit goes in place with no modifications to the RV required. We have our end link, which is going to connect to our frame bracket. That uses the lower 2 bolts from our Crossmember. Then we've got our axle plates, which allow our saddle brackets to mount. And those, you just take the 4 nuts off the bottom of your U-bolts here, put the plate in, put them back in, and torque them down. Now by drastically reducing that body roll that we get in our coach, we're going to increase the drivability. That's going to reduce driver fatigue. So when we actually get to our destination, we're not going to be so worn out from driving that we can't enjoy ourselves. Now let's take a look at our in-use footage. You'll see before we have our sway bar installed, the roll that we have side to side as we're making our turns. The little bit of movement that we see here at the bottom of the coach is magnified into quite a bit of movement at the top. Now with our sway bar installed, we're going to keep everything much more steady and stable. As you can see, there's not as much side to side movement. Without as much movement, we're going to have less of that body roll or that side to side effect at the top. Now to begin our installation, we want to start in the wheel well on the rear wheels. We're going to be on the back side of it. And if you look at your frame, you're going to see 4 bolts. There's a cross member here. Our frame brackets are going to attach to those lower 2 bolts. Now, typically to gain access to these, you're going to need a good set of heavy-duty jack stands. You want to let your axle hang slightly, allowing the leaf spring to come down low enough to gain access. We're going to use a 21mm socket and get those 2 removed. Now on the back side, we're going to have 2 nylon lock nuts that have welded on keepers. Those are going to keep them from turning. We want to hang on to these so we can reuse them. We're going to align the 2 holes in the bracket with the 2 holes our bolt came out of. Once we've got those through, we'll place our nuts on the back side of them again. With our bracket in place, we're ready to retighten our hardware. Now we can grab our torque wrench. We want to torque our bolt down to the specifications listed in our instructions. Now we'll want to repeat that same process over on our passenger side. Our next step is going to be removing the 4 nuts that hold this axle plate up in position. Now this isn't something you'd want to do with your axle hanging. This is something you want to have the support or have your wheels back on the ground to get to and remove those. We'll need an 1.5 inch socket to get this taken care of. You can see I've loosely installed a few nuts here. That's keep this plate from falling when we remove our last nut. This is going to be your axle plate or axle bracket. We've got the 4 large holes, 2 of them elongated. We'll go up. We want the smaller holes to be towards the inside and rear of the coach. Once that's in position, you want to replace your nut and washers. Now we'll snug these back down. Now we can torque those to the specifications in our instructions. Now with this side torqued down properly, we're going to do that exact same thing on the other side, keeping in mind these holes should be towards the middle. Now we've got our brackets installed, that's the hard part. Next we'll just get everything ready so we can start bolting the sway bar up to the vehicle. We've got our split bushings, these are going to fit around the sway bar. It fits right in here. We've got some lubricant that we want to put in there. That helps prevent any moisture getting in there and causing squeaks. We want to get a generous amount. Stuff is really tacky, so have a shop towel or something around to wipe it off when you're done. We're just going to completely coat the inside of this bushing. Now you should have some extra lubricant left over once you get those 2 split bushings taken care of. So I like to do our end links here as well. We've got 2 of these we can do each side, and our sway bar. This is just going to be a little bit all the way around there. Now we're going to take our end link. That's going to go in the frame bracket there. We'll pass one of our larger bolts through. The other side we're going to thread on our nylon lock nut. Now we'll use a 24mm wrench and socket. We want to get that snug down. And we'll do the same thing here on the driver's side. Now we can bring our sway bar up. We want to slide that into the end link and then place our bolt through. You notice the bolts that we're using here and also on our frame brackets, the head, you want that outside. You want the excess bolt towards the inside so it won't cause any interference. And we can thread our nylon lock nuts on each of those bolts, and we'll tighten those down as well, getting them snug. Now we're going to open up our split ring bushing. We want to bring that around our sway bar. I'm just going to be rotating that up and putting our saddle clamps on it. Let's get that done on both sides. Clamps will go around just like that. Now we're going to take our 4 bolts. We're also going to have 8 flat washers and 4 nuts. We're going to take the bolt. You want to place 1 flat washer on it. We're going to bring it down through our axle bracket here. We're going to be using the rear hole and then the hole that's going to match that going forward. There are 2 sets. We've got this set and this set. We want to use the rearmost, innermost hole set. Let's do that on both sides. Now we'll rotate our sway bar up. We want to line up our bolts there with our bracket. Then on the bottom we need to put on a flat washer and one of the lock nuts. Now we'll do the same thing on our passenger side. Now we're going to snug down our hardware. We're going to use 11/16 for the nut, and we'll use a 5/8 for the bolt. Now we want to get those 4 torqued down to the specifications that are listed in our instructions. All right, that's all there is to our installation. Just check everywhere. Make sure you've got clearances like here on your shocks. As you can see, we can get our finger in there on both sides. Doesn't look like we're going to have any issues. With everything torqued down properly, that's going to complete our installation of the Roadmaster Rear Anti-Sway Bar, part number RM-1139-149 on our 2016 Fleetwood Bounder.
Thanks for watching. Click the link in our description below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com. And leave us a comment if you have any questions.